Hello and welcome to our second session of our Play Pedagogy Professional Learning Programme. This session is going to focus on quality learning environments. My name is Naomi Sessford and I work for the Scottish Borders Early Years Pedagogy team, and I'm delighted to be delivering this session for you today. This professional learning session will follow the SPCW training format and aims to be as interactive as possible and will include core input, reflective questions and follow-up activities leading to new understanding. Obviously, it's a pre-recorded session, so our ability to stop and chat is not going to be possible, but please use the pause function throughout the presentation where needed, and if you are watching this with another colleague, then it's a good opportunity to have that professional discussion around reflective questions. At the end of the presentation, you'll be set up a follow-up activity which needs to be completed in time for our follow-up session on Tuesday the 5th of November, and this is going to be delivered live on Teams. Professional learning is just a seed for change, and without positive planned action to change practice in the classroom, there will be no impact. So the follow-up session is a mandatory requirement of completing this training, and you can sign up to the follow-up session on Business World. So the aims of the session are to understand the need for clearly defined learning spaces, indoors and outdoors, and to be able to recognise the key learning in each, to recognise the key features that should be evident across all spaces, and to become familiar with a range of audits to support self-evaluation. So Education Scotland suggests that to ensure fluidity of experiences across early level, the learning space in Primary 1 should feel familiar to ELT children as they arrive in our setting. It tells us that every learning environment, in terms of interactions, experiences and spaces, both indoors and outdoors, it's important to note, tells a story about how play is valued. The learning environment in the early stages of primary school should not look or feel starkly different from a motivating ELK environment. The level of provocation might be greater, the interaction might be more challenging, and the experience on offer might be different, but the school environment should be conducive to learning through play. So this is really a really useful statement from Education Scotland, because it is giving us the permission to really provide those playful learning environments for our children. And if you are a Primary 1 teacher with a composite class, you might be in Primary 1 to Primary 3. This absolutely is also the case for these children. In fact, Realising Ambition was written for children from birth up to the age of 7. So yeah, a really important message. So before we continue to consider our physical spaces, which is mainly what this presentation will focus on today, we really need to pause to consider the importance of the emotional climate we create and the central role of you as the adult in this. Health and wellbeing is an underpinning element allowing all learning to take place, so we need to create a suitable climate for learning to take place. Please pause the slide and take a moment to read the quote. So in the early stages of primary, it really should not be a bums on seat approach. Building the Curriculum 2 back in 2007 told us that when organising our spaces, that they should be arranged to provide opportunities for children to learn through social, sensory, creative, constructive and dramatic activities. And hopefully a little bit later on in the presentation, where you'll see examples of classrooms, you'll see these elements come alive. It continues to tell us that it should be possible to review regularly how your space is being used to provide variety and breadth of opportunity. The use of the space should be flexible, with children involved in planning so that the contexts for learning are adapted to meet their changing needs and interests. It may be desirable, for example, to remove some tables and use those that are in the room for a variety of purpose. Now, if you haven't done so already, it really is useful to take time to visit your nursery, your ELK, and discuss with the practitioners how you might arrange your learning spaces into different zones or what different areas you think you should create. ELK staff are experts at this, and we'd really encourage you to visit them to see what a quality learning environment looks like and ask for their advice. It really is a good opportunity for you to see the learning environment the children have come from and help you to develop your Primary 1 space so that it's a similar space with lots of opportunities for these types of play. In Realising Ambition, section 9, it highlights theorists like Froebel and approaches like the Reggio Emilia approach, whom we have based much of our pedagogical knowledge on. Froebel understands the importance of experiences using the natural environment and tactile resources like wooden blocks. Natural resources such as pine cones, twigs and stones, sand and water play, and creative experiences like clay and painting as developmentally appropriate. He recognised children as being capable and curious individuals and understood the importance of practitioners having a sound understanding of how children learn, with observations being essential to inform their practice. The Reggio Emilia approach views the environment as being essential in promoting learning. It describes the environment as a third teacher. And settings following this approach focus on elements of practice such as uncluttered spaces where children can spend extended periods of time, careful considerations to layout of furniture and resources to allow easy access and space to use resources in different ways, and also soft muted colours to provide a calm ethos and to promote self-regulation, and also children being able to create their own boundaries within the spaces. Both of these theorists have influenced our current understanding of play pedagogy, and we can use this to consider the types of resources and spaces which will support learning through play within our own classrooms. In this role play area, which you can see in the photo here, children can access resources at their level. They're labelled with words and pictures to support their independence. The wooden furniture and the use of natural resources are calming, and there are sufficient resources for children to be creative and imaginative without being overwhelmed by choice. And on the other photos, you can see in the outdoors that these children are using large loose parts to create their own climbing challenge and to develop resilience. So let's take a closer look at creating our learning spaces. Continuous provision describes all of the different provision areas which are available for your children to use every day to promote learning through play and exploration. So the resources you provide in each area should be engaging and relevant and based on children's needs and skills development. Resources should challenge and promote critical thinking and problem solving while remaining open-ended, and before we explored the idea of symbolic play and the importance of open-ended resources for children to explore this type of play. Good continuous provision should also provide adults with lots of opportunities to support progress through play. When we're supporting progress through play, we're getting high levels of engagement and interest. And so we want to, through our continuous provision, to provide a continuous and constant resource to allow children to explore their interests, develop new skills and concepts, and consolidate learning without always the need for an adult. So doing this independently, but sometimes with an adult as well. It acts as the third adult. So planning effectively for continuous provision is crucial and involves a consideration of classroom layout and resourcing that will enable adults to offer a breadth of learning possibilities. So continuous provision also provides a context for a variety of learning conversations between children and adults, with rich opportunities for modelling and extending speech and vocabulary. It is within the learning environment that children will also develop key learning attributes, and how your environment is planned, resourced, valued and used can impact positively or negatively on children's engagement, their independence, the collaboration, self-confidence, resilience and curiosity. So it's really important that we take time to really think about our continuous provision and plan this effectively. So in this slide, and you may want to pause this to have a closer look at the detail there, you can see some suggested areas of continuous provision. To help organise your classroom, you may decide to adopt the idea of learning zones. So this is where areas of play are organised into a zone. Children will be more likely to be engaged within your continuous provision areas if you create enclosed, clearly defined spaces. So creating provision areas in this way tends to lead to fewer distractions and also provides a context for children to collaborate, form relationships and communicate with one another. As you create the spaces, think carefully about the layout of the room. Consider which areas are likely to work well together or alongside each other in order to promote mathematical thinking or meaningful writing opportunities. So on the slide there, you may note that the provision of small world and open-ended loose parts are likely to feature
each of these zones, and whether you have zones or not, they should be one of the key resources available to children, as we know, they're recognised as a great resource for promoting children's curiosity and supporting a stimulating learning environment. Aspects of reading, writing and maths should be in every area of provision to enable children to develop and consolidate learning across all areas of play. Zones can be indoors or they might be outdoors, created with and by your learners, and can be easily changed depending on your learners' needs and interests. Good continuous provision will really support children not only to establish the skills that are significant to that area of play, but also to land on a multitude of skills that they can take out into other areas of play and life. Continuous provision shouldn't be static and will be ever changing in response to children's needs and interests. It should foster a level of independence and decision making. It's important to note though that depending on your space, zones may not work for you. However, hopefully this visual gives you an idea of the areas of provision that you can provide to create a rich play environment for children.
Okay, so whether we have a small, medium or large classroom space, here are some key features that we would hope to see evident across all spaces. So organisation of spaces should be flexible and responsive to the needs and interests of the children. Sometimes just rearranging furniture or resources can have a huge impact on how children engage. Spaces, including our own teacher zone, should be uncluttered. And the children's spaces, again, uncluttered, like enough resources but not too many. Accessible resources are important, so they could be stored on open shelves or containers which are well displayed and labelled. Can children access everything unsupervised? Because if they're constantly interrupting us to access things, then we need to think about what we can do to change just to make it a more independent environment for the children to play in. Where possible, involve children in planning and developing spaces. This gives them the ownership and shows that you value their ideas as well. And children develop respect for real life resources, which are more meaningful than plastic ones. We realise this is not always possible, but there are ways in which we can source these types of things, whether through sort of charity shops or reuse shops, or by sending out a request to families in the school and asking for sort of donations of specific items. It is important to be specific though, as you can end up with lots that you don't necessarily want for your classroom. It takes a long time to sort through. So neutral colours would help to reduce sensory overload for some children and create a calming atmosphere, so it's something else to reflect on. Open-ended resources encourage creativity and imagination, and the same object can be used in multiple ways on the same day. So what open-ended resources do you have in your classroom? Do you have enough within your spaces, or is this something that you could improve for the children? Within each space, look for opportunities to differentiate resources according to the developmental needs of your children. For example, some children may have the dexterity to manipulate connects, while others may still need to prefer to play with Lego or Duplo. So is there enough resources to differentiate between children, and is a challenge for learners? Responding to learners' needs and interests through the addition of a provocation or invitation, which may provoke curiosity or exploration. So for example, the addition of puppets to the story corner or a recipe book and scales to the role play area is also an important addition to our spaces. We'll be looking at provocations and sort of invitations to learn a little bit more detail in session 3, balance of the day, when we're thinking about the sort of role of the adult in initiating learning experiences. So I mentioned the idea of loose parts on the previous slide there, and loose parts are such a fantastic resource to have within your classroom, and hopefully, and not even only in your classroom, hopefully you're lucky enough to have large loose parts available to all children, no matter if they're in Prime 1 or Prime 7 or in between, within the playground, because they're such a fantastic open-ended resource which really support children's play and give them lots of opportunities to collaborate, to communicate, to be imaginative and creative with. So hopefully this is an experience that they do have within their playtimes, or when you're taking them outdoors to learn as well. Such a fantastic resource. If you don't know, loose parts are materials that, when given to our children, can become infinite wish. That is the beauty of them. They can be used freely to create or explore textures, develop curiosity and imagination, and they provide a great sensory play experience and are a key feature of a high quality learning environment. Many of our children are so used to playing with toys, which have an obvious use, that you may have to model how to use loose parts creatively and imaginatively, because they may have not had this experience before. So it's a really important part of our role in early stages of primary, that we're taking time to do this. And actually this is where you can maybe use an invitation to learn or a provocation to start this process. But it will take time, and it's necessary. But this is necessary to ensure the success of using loose parts for effective learning. So in the first photo here, this might be more like what you have available in Primary 1, but you can see that most of these resources are still open-ended and could be used in different ways, although they're not natural. These were used alongside Play-Doh, so the matchsticks could be used to make a wall or legs or arms on a figure. The pipe cleaners could make hair on a figure or stems on a flower. The possibilities are endless, but it's about using what you have and thinking creatively. So in the second photo, here you can see how natural loose parts can be organised and accessible to children. And here, the photos and word provide a visual prompt for children to access the resources independently, and also gives them that opportunity to be responsible in returning the resources to their home. So yeah, so these are the sort of, if you have loose parts, hopefully this is something you have within your provision, that they, the key thing is to think about with your loose parts is that they need to be accessible, uncluttered, open-ended, real life and natural, consistent, and be provided with your indoor and outdoor spaces. For more information on loose parts, you can look at the Early Years portal or our Play Pedagogy toolkit, and use the Loose Parts Toolkit document, which you can find in both of those platforms, which is full of useful information. So a wee bit more here on organising your resources. It's vital to organise resources to ensure that they're accessible, so that the children can access them, and also to ensure that they don't get damaged. You could choose to have what we'd call like a workshop set up in all areas, where the resources are available to children all of the time, but they're not set out by the adult, so therefore they can access the resources however they wish to within their play. Indoors, as we've suggested earlier, you ideally want to keep tables and carpet areas clear and free of equipment, but have resources close by that the children can access. So for example, a shelving unit for Play-Doh with the tools clearly shadowed for the children to tidy up when they've finished. Shadowing, if you've not heard of it before, is used to aid tidying, and by shadowing areas such as Play-Doh, construction and musical instruments, it also promotes the aspect of maths, such as sorting by size and shape. Areas should be well stocked, tidied, labelled, and as we've just suggested, shadowed, and this way children are leading their learning and developing their independence and responsibility. Okay, so here we can see an extract from Realising Ambition on between pages 73 and page 77, and this is looking at what we should be providing in our classrooms through our interactions, experiences and spaces to make them literacy and numeracy and mathematically rich environments. The learning environment should be language and communication friendly, and rich in environmental print showing meaningful connections to the way we use words and numbers in our everyday lives. There's lots of elements to practice here, so I'd really encourage you to pause the presentation here to have a read over the effective elements of practice mentioned. We would recommend that you familiarise yourself with these if you've not done so already, as this tells us really what is expected of a mathematical and literacy rich environment. So you could even use it as a type of audit tool to identify what you do well and where there may be gaps in your provision in terms of a mathematically and literacy rich environment. So a quality environment will enable children to develop the 4 capacities from the Curriculum for Excellence. Provisions of these opportunities will enable children to develop skills for life and work that we referred to earlier in session 1. In Realising Ambition, it identifies key features which should be present in quality spaces. This is about opportunities to promote literacy and numeracy, not just focused in teaching times, but across all of our spaces. We'll focus a little bit more on this later. Schemas are repeated patterns of behaviour, evident across a range of different situations. Not all children will display schematic behaviour, but a skilled practitioner should offer further opportunities for the child to test out their thinking. So it's important that our environment is supportive of children's schematic play. Examples might include transporting, where children have a fascination with moving things from one place to another, or enclosing, where the children has an interest in enclosed spaces, making barricades. You might see this in the block plate area. If you don't know much about schemas, you can find out more on the SBC Early Years portal. Thinking about independence and choice as well, how much independence and choice do children really have within your space? How do you promote curiosity and inquiry? This might be through the use of interest in objects, asking a question, or setting a challenge. But here are some of the sort of key elements which you must think about, including within your environment to ensure that high quality learning space. So it's important that we plan and review our spaces throughout the year. Realising Ambition tells us that as pedagogical leaders, we should know the purpose and possibilities of the materials we provide outdoors and indoors. This is something we're going to explore in the next few slides, where we'll be taking a look at examples of learning spaces across the borders, and we'll be using these to reflect on the learning that we think the children can experience when they play in these areas. This quote goes on to tell us it's essential that we regularly evaluate how children are using the spaces in their environment and make changes and additions when required. And again, this is something we'll look at a little bit later on in the presentation towards the end, where we'll explore the use of audit tools and levels of involvement tools to help us with this process. It goes on to tell us children should be involved in developing and caring for the environment. And by involving children fully in planning their learning, they will begin to understand the importance of caring for the environment and for the resources. And this idea of caring for the environment and the resources is something that you really need to take time with at the beginning of the year to establish, sort of rules and expectations for returning resources to where they live within each space, to encourage the children's independence and responsibility, and it really does make the play much easier if you spend a lot of time helping children to do this at the beginning of the year. So here are some examples of indoor learning environments from Balmoral Primary School and Denham Primary School. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to pause the presentation and just take a moment to reflect on the knowledge, understanding and skills across the curriculum that you think the children can develop through playing in these spaces. So if you pause the slide now, have a look at the photos again if you wish, and reflect on the idea of what learning do you think the children are gaining through playing in these spaces. So what opportunities for learning could you see within the home corner here? So you can see the provision of open-ended materials there. So that the children, I think, have got some cones on the table there, so the children can use these however they wish within the home corner. Perhaps they are pieces of fruits, perhaps they are a biscuit, or perhaps they're something completely different, but the idea is that they are there to support the children's imagination and curiosity and just make that learning environment a little bit more stimulating rather than having perhaps plastic pieces of fruit for them to engage with. You can see that there's environmental print on the wall there, including a calendar and a to-do list, and also the children's own artwork to make it more homely and inviting. So the learning that the children can experience in the home corner, as you can see from the slide here, it touches on a lot of the curriculum. So even if we think about, literacy and communication, as children interact with others, they might negotiate plans and activities and take turns in conversations. They might make up their own stories or sort of role play stories within the home corner and use language to imagine and recreate roles and experiences within the home corner. And expressive arts, they can use drama to explore real and imaginary situations, helping them to understand the world. And in social studies, they could explore the idea of making decisions and taking responsibility in everyday experiences in play and showing considerations for others. And in fact, you could apply this to lots of areas of play within your learning spaces. And in health and well-being, in everyday activity and play, I explore and make choices to develop my learning and interests. I know that friendships, caring and sharing, fairness, equality and love are important in building positive relationships. Again, these could be reflected in lots of areas of your spaces in your classroom. So let's take a look at some of the possible learning linked to the curriculum for excellence that children could experience by playing in a well-resourced and organised arts and craft area. So if we think about expressive arts, for example, and the experiences and outcomes within expressive arts, I've got the freedom to discover and choose ways to create images and objects using a variety of materials. Inspired by a range of stimuli, I can express my ideas, thoughts and feelings through activities within art and design. Working on my own and with others, I use my creativity and imagination to solve design problems. And these are just some of the experiences and outcomes that children could explore within this space. And it doesn't need to be an activity which is set and led by the teacher. They can explore all of these by independently accessing this in their own spontaneous play. Other elements of the curriculum, as you can see, there's lots on the screen here. I'll just pick out a couple more. In literacy, as I listen and talk in different situations, I'm learning to take turns and develop my awareness of when to talk and when to listen. So perhaps if there's children creating something together or working alongside each other, they have the opportunity to do this. In numeracy, I enjoy investigating objects and shapes and can sort, describe and be creative with them. So there are some examples of the learning that children can experience just through playing in this area here. If you want to pause the slide again and take a moment to look at to have a closer look at the other experiences and outcomes that have been demonstrated here. Okay, so let's take a look at this very inviting sandpit you can see within this primary 1 classroom in the photo. So if we think about the possible links to learning, there will be plenty more links, but here are some examples. So for example, in mathematics, the experience and outcome which states that I have experimented with everyday items as units of measure to investigate and compare sizes and amounts in my environment, sharing my findings with others. The sandpit could provide opportunity for children to explore that element of math there. It could provide them with the opportunity to identify senses and use them to explore the world around them, and also to learn to assess and manage risk to protect themselves and each other's as they learn how to play with the sand safely. In technologies, it could be that they're exploring the use of mechanisms within a product they've made. So all of these opportunities could be explored within the sandpit. Romans Primary School in Kelso shares her indoor and outdoor classroom environments. If you click on the image on the screen, this will take you to her video. It lasts, the section on spaces is generally from the beginning and lasts for about 20 minutes, and then she then goes on to talk about sort of timetabling her day for play and the balance of the day. However, we'll all be looking at this in more detail in session 3, so if you want to just focus on the idea of the spaces. As we said, we know that planning your learning spaces can feel overwhelming, and everybody has a different context in which they're teaching in, and you know you'll be at different points in your journey. But hopefully this video gives you an idea, as well, the images we've just looked at, of what high quality provision looks like, and gives you an idea of sort of how you could begin to plan your spaces or how you could improve your spaces. Remember, we can't do it all at once, so start where you think is best suited for your learners and for yourself. Okay, so some reflective questions for you to think about. Again, pause the video while you reflect on these, but thinking about everything we have looked at and explored so far, having looked at some photos of examples and explored the learning that can take place in high quality learning spaces, and having looked at Zoe's video of her Primary 1 classroom space at Broomlands, think about at the moment how well does your learning environment reflect the key features of a high quality space that we have explored on previous slides, but specifically slide 9. And what learning do you see taking place in the play spaces you provide in the classroom? If you're not sure, what could you do to become more aware of the learning that children experience as part of play in these spaces? Please take a moment to pause while you reflect on this. So we've talked a lot about our indoor spaces, but as you know, outdoor spaces is equally important, if not more, when thinking about high quality learning environments for children to learn in. We must not forget the outdoor space when we're thinking about learning environments. It's really important that we include outdoors as a regular learning space for our children. And as Margaret Macmillan said, the best classroom and the richest cupboard is roofed only by the sky. And this is so true. Outdoor learning is a key feature of Learning for Sustainability, which is a key component of the Curriculum for Excellence. It is an entitlement for learners and a core part of our professional standards. Curriculum for Excellence Outdoor Learning tells us that outdoor learning is an entitlement for all children and should be a regular and progressive experience. Taking children on regular visits into the playground and beyond the gate provides children with rich, fun and engaging spaces to play and learn in, and also helps them to develop an ethic of care about nature and for our natural world. We can explore local environments such as a park, local green spaces, woodlands, and depending on where you live, even local beaches or local shops throughout the year. The outdoors allows children the freedom to explore and challenge themselves, develops deep understanding of nature and supports children to assess and manage risks themselves. Sadly, children aren't having the same outdoor experiences or free play experiences that they once had. Many of our learners are spending huge amounts of play on screen and are missing out on the huge benefits that play has on their development. We have a professional commitment to ensure that the rich opportunities for play outdoors are an integral part of children's education. Realising Ambition reiterates the importance of daily high-quality outdoor learning experiences having a direct and social impact on children's physical, cognitive, social, mental health and emotional development. In ELK, children usually have free flow and direct access to an enclosed outdoor space at all times. We are aware that P1 teachers are not usually fortunate to have the luxury of a permanent and exclusive outdoor learning space. And if your classroom has no direct access outdoors, we appreciate that this will be challenging, and it may be that rather than having a free flow space, that you're making use of your playground for outdoor learning experiences and your local green spaces. Think outside the box and plan into your day or week to include some outdoor time for children to have opportunities for different types of play and learning. If you are lucky to have an immediate outdoor space, then here's a visual to give you some ideas of what you could include within your outdoor space. Where possible, outdoor resources should be stored in containers or sheds in an accessible, well-labelled manner which children can self-select. Tarpaulins and bungee cords can be used to weatherproof resources. Builders' yards and local tradesmen are often a good source of free resources to resource your outdoor space with. Organisation and training. The children know how to access and return key resources is the success of the space, especially as we're usually the only adult with them in that space. Start with a few resources and establish your expectations for that space. Again, this visual just gives you an idea of what you might include in your outdoor space. We're not saying you have to have all of this. Again, the key is knowing the purpose of what you provide in your spaces. So again, pause the slide if you wish to take a closer look at this. We do have further information on outdoor spaces on our early level portal, as well as our Play Pedagogy Padlet. So as we said, outdoors, whether in your playground or beyond the gates, provides endless opportunities for motivating, fun, challenging and engaging learning opportunities. There's an abundance of outdoor learning ideas online, and a great starting point is Learning Through Landscapes, who have a great selection of resources for using outdoor learning as a space to learn across all levels. You can also find further information within the Learning Spaces section of our Play Padlet, where you can access ideas for outdoor learning in early and first level. So earlier I mentioned the use of audits to develop and monitor the effectiveness of our play spaces that we provide for children. Audits provide a means for ourselves to identify where in our practice or provision areas for improvement and identify the impacts of any changes that we've implemented as a result of this. So over the next few slides, we're going to share with you the various audit tools that we do have available. On this page here, you can see the SBC Core Provision Toolkit is mentioned. Now, this is the one that I used, a snapshot I used earlier on the spaces slides when we're looking at the learning that takes place within each space. These can be found on our Play Pedagogy Padlet, and you can use them to reflect on the learning within each space, the resources that should be in each space, how to organise the space, and also the adult role with supporting learning in that space, and that counts as well. That's same for the SBC Outdoor Provision Toolkit, and you'll also find an SBC STEM audit tool on our Play Pedagogy Padlet. And if STEM is an area of focus for yourself or for your school, then this could be a good tool to use to reflect on the effectiveness of your indoor and outdoor space in providing experiences in STEM for children. Okay, so the audit tool that you can see here, which can be used for both indoor and outdoor spaces, could be used to help you reflect on how well the key features of a quality play area, which we shared earlier on in the presentation, I think slide 9, how well these are reflected in a specific play area in your classroom. This could be a good starting point if you're at the beginning of your play journey. Again, these are available on our Play Pedagogy Padlet within the Audit Tools button. This is another audit that we have created to help you reflect on your sort of play culture and environment. So it not only looks at spaces, but the idea of interactions and experiences, things such as the balance of the day and the different roles of the adults in supporting play. So this would be perhaps more useful for somebody who is perhaps further on in their play journey. Another tool you can use to evaluate the quality of your space is a Leuven scale, which was developed by Fer Levers. He created a set of 5 descriptors which are an effective tool in measuring levels of involvement of an individual, group or class. These are a really useful tool to use to observe and assess how engaged children are in the learning spaces. We are aiming for our children to have level 4 or 5 of involvement, because if we have concentration, creativity, energy and perseverance, then that equates to a high quality learning experience in a high quality learning space. And to finish off today's session, here are some of the key aspects of best practice that have been identified in school inspection reports in 2023, where the school was graded either very good or excellent. This helps us to understand what quality looks like and what we should be all striving for our learners. So it tells us that teachers ensure natural, creative and collaborative approaches to outdoor learning. They use high quality spaces and activities which provoke interest and support children to explore. It says that play opportunities are well matched and appropriate to children's individual learning, that multi-sensory activities and block play, for example, engage younger children's curiosity. Play experiences ensure a continuity of experience for children moving through the setting. Open-ended materials support children's curiosity, and literacy and numeracy are embedded in our spaces to give opportunities to practice these skills. So this gives you a really, really good idea and reiterates our key messages from today of the high quality that we are trying to achieve through the provision of our indoor and outdoor spaces. As I mentioned in the earlier slide at the beginning, professional learning is just a seed for change, and without positive planned action to change practice in the classroom, there will be no impact. To enable this positive impact, please engage with a follow-up activity and a follow-up online session as part of this professional learning. The follow-up activity for the Quality Learning Environments training is to choose one of the activities that you see on the screen and be prepared to share this at our follow-up session on the 5th of November. If you have a well-established indoor or outdoor space, perhaps you want to choose to use a Leuven scale of involvement to reflect on a specific area of play to evaluate how well it is engaging children in play. Maybe you will choose to use one of the audit tools instead to reflect on your different areas of play or whether there are any key areas missing or resources within a specific area. Or perhaps you want to look at it to find out a bit about your role with supporting play in that area. Once reflecting on an audit tool, you can use this to make a list of what you need to do. Trying to plan your indoor and outdoor spaces can be overwhelming, so don't try to do it all at once. We hope that this session has been helpful in supporting your understanding of the key features of a high quality space and how they support children's learning. We hope that it's led to new understanding, and we look forward to meeting you at a follow-up session and giving you opportunities to share your follow-up activity.